film that we watched day before yesterday, and it's called The AI Doc, and I'll let you say the rest.
It's the AI Duck or How I Became an Apocalyptimist. Say
All
that 10
right.
times fast.
We're gonna do a review of this film together, uh, and hopefully we'll have different thoughts come from different angles, and no holds barred, uh,
Yep.
and no PC talk here, so trigger warning. Uh,
Sounds good to me.
all right, Brett, why don't you introduce yourself and I'll introduce myself after that.
Sure thing. So my name is Brett Sklar, and I am a serial entrepreneur. Of recent, I started an organization called Grow Powered, a fractional CMO company, where I work with a good team of fractional CMOs. And over the last couple of years, trying to figure out how to grow and scale the company, I found a hidden secret weapon. Around the same time when all of us started getting the Chat GPT bug, I started diving into that as well. And I learned how to scale up and optimize my company using a lot of AI. And I took that learning and I started sharing it with my fellow CEOs. And recently, I've been fortunate enough to go on the road and talk to a lot of CEOs in large groups and small groups. And in July, after speaking to over 1,000 CEOs, I was lucky enough to put all that learning into a book, which I call AI Without the BS, the CEO's Playbook for Actually Getting AI Right. And then that's actually sort of launched my speaking activities as well as just, being introduced to things like this where we can share ideas about AI. So that's a little bit about me.
Awesome. My name is David Jitendranath. I have a couple of things that I'm working on. One is, well, first of all, I am a director of AI apps at a Microsoft consulting firm called Lantern, and a huge shout out to them. But having said that, the views here in this video are my personal views. It's got nothing to do with the Lantern. Um, I'm working on two things. One is my blog writing on Substack. So that's davestar.substack.com, davestar.substack.com. And then my YouTube channel, which I'm publishing this video. It's the Neo Renaissance Man. So check that out. Um, let's dive in. Let's talk about the premise of the movie because I think there might be some folks who might come to this video without watching the movie. So maybe we'll start there. Do you want to talk about it?
Yeah, and I had a little bit of a cheat code, if you will. I was lucky enough to go to Sundance Film Festival this year, the last year that was in Park City, Utah. And while we didn't see the full documentary, we saw pieces of it, but we saw the director and some of the producers and some of the investors in this film at a panel, and so got to have a good conversation about that. But the premise of the documentary, it really comes from the mindset of the director, Daniel Rohr. Um, and I would say that the biggest part of this is he's getting ready to have a baby. And he uses the potential and then the actual birth of his child as a question, which is, are we heading into uh, a world of optimism and hope and positivity when it comes to AI and all the things that AI can do? Or are we headed into pretty much the opposite, peril of what AI will do to us instead of for us? And so I like the way that the documentary centers around this, that this is there the promise or is there the peril? And there's always a little bit of both, but which one's really going to, dominate or drive humanity? And what does it mean when it comes to my baby who was just born and what that means for them in the world going forward? So that I think is a general synopsis, and I'd love to hear, David, you share what you
Yeah,
thought.
I think the premise is right. Just kind of a couple of things to add. And the movie starts by them meeting at I believe, a coffee shop, like he and his, wife. So, he says, I'm going to marry you in 150 days. So he starts off very strong. I just want to, there's
Yep.
something behind it here that I'm going to share. So he comes across as a guy who's like, I'm convinced I need to do this. He meets her and then he right away says, I'm going to marry you one day, which is kind
Yep.
of an interesting thing to say. Like, I like guys like that sometimes, like
Yep.
they're very sure about things, certain. And then obviously dates and marries her in 150 days, he says. And then
Hmm.
and then they show the backdrop of chat gpt developing, like the first version, gpt-2 coming out. All of a sudden became popular, I think November of 2022 maybe.
Hmm.
And then they kind of like, so the movie's kind of shown over a span of 2 years. So, we just kind of condensing, just for the sake of narration here. But, like over 2 years, he's dated and married, and now he's having a child. And now, like, it's present time, maybe 2025 or when the movie was made. So he's now kind of thinking about like this. So that's the backdrop. I just wanted to add that backdrop.
Yep.
Um,
Yep.
do you want to have, like, what are your general comments at a high level about the movie? And I have some notes here for that also. So
Yeah, and I'm a big fan of the movies. I love going to movies. I love documentaries. More recently, especially after Sundance, I saw a ton of documentaries, and I'm seeing a trend in documentaries, which is the author of the documentary or the director of the documentary tends to bring a lot of personal experience into it, and I've seen that done really well. And I've seen it done where it's just a very selfish, self-centered piece of self that really has no meaning. And I think in this case, in general, I think that the director Dan Rohr did a great job with making it fun, making it playful, giving you just enough behind the scenes so you get him thinking. There are these conversations he has with his wife at different parts of this documentary about where the where AI could go and what's the moral of the documentary and and how it should end. And so I think there was enough playfulness and fun to keep those of us that have attention issues engaged. So I thought from that perspective, it was a very good film. And I've also been a little bit jaded. I've probably seen many documentaries, but I've seen four different documentaries around AI within the last probably 6 or 8 months. And there was one of them that I saw at Sundance that was it was called Ghost in the Machine. And you walk out of that feeling like there is zero hope for humanity whatsoever. Like you just, I had to like, it took me days to shake off the feeling from that documentary. And this isn't that. This paints two pictures of that promise and that peril. And I think it does a good job of looking at both. The criticism I have is it felt like it sort of did this playful ending where it ended with everything is great and everything is wonderful and there's hope. And then it goes back to him and his wife having a conversation. She's like, no, that's not how this is going to end. You're going to give them some more realistic take. And then there's a bit of a second ending, and then there's a tiny little third ending as well. So I feel like, from a movie critic perspective or a documentary critic perspective, yeah, I'd like to see it a little bit shorter, and I don't really agree with having that multitude of endings. I kind of get it. I remember there was the movie about Dick Cheney where Christian Bale was in it, and it was called Dick, or it was called Veep. It was about the vice president, and it had this false ending about halfway through, and it was really comical. And I feel like he attempted to do that in this, but maybe not quite as successfully. So I think that was good. And this director, um, he has a notebook with him at all times. He's always writing and he's always doodling and he's always doing watercolor in this and just incredible visuals of just about everything. And so they use that as a set piece many times in this documentary. And I thought that was really well done. So I
I
think from
didn't
that
observe that.
perspective, it was very playful.
That's pretty
Yeah,
cool you observed
David,
it.
I'd love to hear your thoughts overall, generally about the film.
Yeah, yeah. So I've got lots to say on general comments, right? So obviously, against this backdrop of this story, this couple having a child, there's several interviews with all these experts in AI, including folks like Sam Altman, Anthropic CEO Dario, and then Yuval, the guy who
Hmm.
wrote Nexus. I think these are three people that I know. There's many, many others. There's a couple of heavy metal looking, playing, guitar playing looking guys.
Yeah,
Uh,
yeah.
I think they should stick to playing heavy metal, honestly. And I'll tell you why. It's not just by the looks. But here's the thing. So the movie asks a lot of these type of questions. What is artificial intelligence? Will it take over humanity? Is there an arms race in AI across all the different nations? How soon will we attain AGI? It's sort of like all these really extreme questions about AI. Um, and maybe that's necessary for because I we both are in the AI area, so maybe we know a lot of it, like we know how
Hmm.
it works and things like that. Maybe for the common folks out there, it's going to be like, man, I don't know what this thing is. So
Hmm.
maybe that's one of the reasons they're asking these questions. But at the same time, I thought, to me, sort of like a nuanced viewer of AI, it was number one, these questions are very, very extreme, like talking about AGI. Well, define AGI. Like, that's the first thing I would say. And then, or maybe even ask Sam Altman that question, right? So,
Hmm.
anyways, these are all, to me, very polemic questions. What it reminded me of was, I grew up Anglican. So, I kind of going through that faith and, watching all these debates between atheists and Christian theologians, like, atheists like Christopher Hitchens, Sam Harris, Richard Dawkins. And the questions would be more like, does God exist? And if
Yeah.
God exists, why is there evil in this world? Like, how can he be a loving God if there's so much evil?
Right, right.
That it just kind of gave me that same sort of feeling, like we're watching a movie or we're watching some sort of a thing with these polemic questions. I just think, like, overall, i I liked the different viewpoints. However, I was hoping that it would also dive into more nuanced questions. I kind of felt like this is inducing a lot of fear and confusion.
Yep.
Like, I could hear literally in the movie theater lots of, like, oh, wow, like, or
Yeah.
ha ha ha, like all these laughter and, especially when they talk about, AI taking over and things like that. So anyway, that's kind of, maybe we'll talk about some of these expert opinions. Like, what did you think about some of these experts?
Yeah, and there were definitely a lot of experts, and I think that there was a good mix of what I consider the right people to bring in for thoughts about this. It was definitely good to see that big mix. To go back to your point though, and just to sort of sprinkle on a little bit more about the movie before we dive into the thoughts we got from various people. This was not a technical documentary.
Right.
There was very little tech talk. It was an exercise in philosophy,
Yeah.
I think more than anything else. And so it did a good job of keeping away from getting into that tech speak and getting into the nerdy part and talking about code or, JS code or all these different things. It did a really good job of that. And I think it had to do that to make itself more timeless. So that it wasn't going to be a movie or a documentary with an expiration date. So I think it did a good job there. And so that's one of the things I really liked about it. Um, there were a lot of experts brought in, philosophers, people that dealt with specifically dealing in AI risk, AI safety, AI security. And there were two camps. It started out with a lot of the people that are, the ones you would either see at a rock concert or, stuck in a data center somewhere. And there was a trend based on that personality profile of the call it doomsdayers, call it the people that are looking at the worst of humanity and what humanity will do because of AI and what AI will do to humanity. And then there were, people that I think were less on that rock and roll, sort of rock star wannabe look with the long hair and the funky looks, and people that are a little bit more, I guess, serious. And one of the guys that really got me thinking, that was in the documentary, his name was Tristan Harris, and he's a co-founder for the Center for Humane Technology. And I wish I could remember exactly the things that he said and exactly what, writing down what he talked about. But when he talked about the evolution of AI, and he talked about how as it becomes smarter, and there was a premise of AGI in this film, and there's a question of what is AGI, and there's just as many definitions as there are people in the world of what that is. But when he talked about the fact that when we as humanity get to AGI, that's where the things really change. And so if if AI models are built with all of this human knowledge being brought into this one big bucket, and then there's obviously a lot of different LLMs, but if it's all being brought into this one big bucket, that's the large language model, and then the systems get to the point where they have all of human knowledge that they're
Mhm.
aware of, where do they go next? And so, how do they either build a second bucket or build a bigger bucket or just fill on top of the bucket with the things that go beyond human thought and human experience and human, based content and ideas? And sort of how does it shift into that? And then, so that got me thinking quite a bit. The others, I will tell you, there is something both powerful and just really fucking creepy about Sam Altman.
Oh, really?
Yes.
How so?
Well, and I've seen a lot of things where Sam Altman speaks, and um he feels so intentional. He feels like a person who knows what the questions are before the questions are asked. And he is very good about not telling people something that he doesn't know. There was a question of, is it going to save us or is it going to hurt us? And he's like, well,
Yeah,
I don't know.
yeah.
And so, I felt like he's such a pragmatic, very direct person that it kind of creeps me out sometimes. And so for me being a pragmatist, I think some of the people that really, struck a chord with me was Sam Altman, Dario Amodei, as well as his sister Daniela Amodei, and the
Oh, I
people
didn't
that,
know that they were brothers and sisters.
yeah, I believe that they are
Okay.
siblings. I believe. Um, and um, they're very pragmatic about the technology, but they're also the ones that are warning us about the technology.
Mm.
And this is another thing about the film that the film really drags out this fact that we are in this called a vicious cycle or called an awesome cycle. But nobody knows where this technology is going. The technology is writing its own technology for the most part these days. And nobody is stopping the technology so that we as humans can get ahead of it because we have different models competing with each other, right? We've got these top five models in the US and a couple of others across the world. And we are so hell bent on competing, on getting so much money, $40 billion, $50 billion, $100 billion. We're building these data centers and we, have no idea the impact of those data centers. And we're doing it because if one person doesn't, if Sam doesn't, or if Dario Amodei doesn't, or if Elon Musk doesn't, or if Mark Zuckerberg doesn't, then they're going to let somebody else, build the next, great thing when it comes to AI. And so nobody's pausing to
Mhm.
say, what are we actually building or what are we letting AI build? Um, and let's get ahead of it as a humanity, as a
Mm.
society, so that we know what the next step is going to look like. But
Yeah,
instead, there's so much fierce competition. And
yeah.
it's not only a technology versus technology, it's geopolitical as well. that we are not slowing down. And so we are driving blind into this next thing. And so it was a combination of Sam Altman, Dario Amodei, and others that really
Mhm.
sort of brought out this fear that we are competing and we are trying to win a game, but we don't know how the game is won.
Yeah.
And we just know that if one of these different technology platforms or one of these LLMs stops, that somebody else will get there first, not even knowing what there is. So that's kind of what I gathered on the fear side. And we can I'll pause there because I want to get your
Yeah.
thoughts, David. And by the way, we're doing this because after this movie, David and I were so sort of thinking about this, we had to go grab a drink and we had to talk about this. And so because I think there's a lot of like unanswered things. And
Yes.
and I suggest if you are in or involved or interested in AI and you go watch this, go watch it with a friend and go out for a drink afterwards. Because I think that is very, very
That's
um
a
uh
great suggestion. That's
yeah.
brilliant. I
So
love
anyway,
that.
I'll stop and I'll turn it back over to you.
So, okay, so on the expert opinions, right? Here are a couple few things that stood out to me. The heavy metal dudes. I'm sorry, I gotta shit on those guys. It's like, so there's one guy who's asked, like, oh, how will AI take over humanity? Is one of the type of questions that's being
Mhm.
asked of these guys. And then one guy literally says something like, well, ants coexist with human beings. So, and I could not believe that, dude. Dude,
Yeah.
you should stick to playing in Slayer, Slaughter, and those heavy metal bands with your hair. And I mean, I'm not jealous. I don't have hair. I know that. But it's like, just go do your thing. Like, don't come in here. And so, it's kind of like almost having this opinion that AI will be this sort of like being, and then we'll kind of coexist with AI as ants. Like,
Mhm.
that was his opinion. So anyway, that's like more on the funny negative side. On the positive side, I felt like, everybody was giving like almost like AI will save this world kind of thing. We almost like I'm approaching this a little more philosophical and theological, maybe. Like we all historically, we have always had this sort of like in the Bible, the book of Revelations, where like we're going to be freed and redeemed from the suffering of the world kind of thing. And this is kind of like you will see this throughout history, not just in Christianity. It's just that I grew up in that tradition, but it's there in Hinduism. It's there maybe not so much in Buddhism. Maybe Buddhism is kind of like this blowing out nirvana that we all attain. And then in the Greek thought, it's very much there. End of times, that type of thinking. In fact, like when Socrates was put to death, kind of that's when everybody thought like this history is going to end. So I feel like on the positive side, AI is this end thing that everybody wants. Like it's going to help us inhabit new planets. It's going to save the global warming, the climate crisis
Mhm.
that we have. It's going to cure us of many, many diseases, and we're going to have like this big health span instead of like.
Yeah.
So, like, I feel like these are all pie in the sky type of ideas that's going to save us from all the suffering of the world. And
Yep.
almost, I also feel like, the one guy telling this guy, Daniel, hey, if you're having a baby, number one, Daniel's kind of going around asking this question to everybody: should I have a child? Should I have a baby? He never asked that, should I marry this girl when he met her at the coffee shop? He was very sure, I want to marry
Right.
this
Right.
girl.
Yep.
But it's interesting when he's about to have a child, he wants to ask people, like, should I have a baby? Like, dude, have the same conviction that you had when you had, like, go ahead if you want. to have a baby, have a baby, like, or if you don't want to, it's okay. Either ways, make a decision, make a choice.
Yeah.
But going back to my point about this save the world type of thing, save us from suffering, there's one guy who says if you have a child, he or she could be like a painter, could be an artist, could be a poet, and they could be painting in Greece, by the ocean, and all
Right.
these beautiful landscapes. And I'm like, well, number one, kind of artists, there's a lot of suffering. I'm reading this book called Comfort Crisis. It talks about how we are entering this world of comfort and how that is preventing us from resilience, achieving certain exceptional, attaining like skills like, being an artist or a poet or a writer
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
like that. It's almost like we have to go through suffering to come out and become that type of a bigger person that we want to be. If we enter a world of comfort, the more comfort you have, you will never become an artist that you ever want to be. You will never
Right.
become that poet that you want to be. You will never become the musician or the guitarist or like you have to go through suffering to come up
Yeah.
the other way, right? So I feel like that philosophy is sort of like giving us that sort of like whitewashed narrative that
Hmm.
AI is going to save us and it's going to make you have fulfilling lives. Um,
Yep.
that's
Yep.
that's sort of like a rose-colored glasses opinion by most experts on this movie, except maybe I think Sam Altman was the only one I felt like he didn't have that opinion. So that's kind of my high level,
Yeah. You
thoughts
know,
on.
on that point, David, I just want to sort of expand on that a little
Yeah,
bit. Um, because I think you're onto something very true. He talked about the fact that, that one of the people in the documentary is like, hey, well, your kid, could be painting in Greece, and showed a little caricature picture of the kid painting in Greece. The optimists, and there really was like optimists and pessimists,
right.
right? And it's almost like what's their life like in general, and they sort of mirror that, right? So but the pessimists definitely tried to paint a picture of all these different sequences of events that could happen that could go down the road where AI is taking over humanity, or it removes the purpose of humanity is probably a bigger way to look at it.
Yeah,
The optimist painted the picture like, oh, your child could be, sitting on the cliffs in Greece and painting the most beautiful pictures of the cliffs. Or your child could be, a great philosopher and yada, yada, yada. The thing that I didn't really care for about the optimist that I felt
yeah,
left a bad taste in my mouth, which
yeah,
makes me think that maybe I'm one of those pessimists, I guess, is they didn't talk about the fact that how are people going to make money to live? How are people going to have purpose? And to your
yeah,
point about like, the and I forgot the name of the book you mentioned, but you have to suffer. You have to the comfort can be an enemy,
yeah,
because it's where you push yourself. And we live in a society of comfort, right? Things can get delivered to our door in 30 minutes or less, and that's a comfort, but it doesn't allow us to really, work hard at things, and that can really be a negative consequence. And so the optimist, I think, missed a big part of the picture, which is how are we going to survive as a society? Are we going to need to have, the concept of UBI, or this universal income,
yeah,
to have people live? And I've got, we can talk about that in a little bit, but I felt like there was a lot of pieces missing from the optimist point of view about how we're going. I hope the optimists are right. But I think that the optimists are missing a part where we are going to, back to your point, we're going to have to suffer
yes,
before governments can really help and figure things out, before humans really figure out their purpose. If the robots
yeah,
and AI is doing a lot of the thinking. One of the quotes that stood out to me, and you'll remember who it was, and I'm bad with names, so I apologize, is, AI can do thinking better than humans can do,
mhm,
potentially.
yeah,
Um, but taking that, and so the AI might be more intelligent,
right,
but it's the wisdom that answers what do you do with that intelligence that AI may never be
Oh,
able
you're
to
talking
do?
about Yuval's code.
Yes.
In the okay,
Yeah.
uh, I remember this one. That's
Yep.
a good one.
Yep.
Like very
Yep.
succinct, right? He says intelligence is about solving problems. Wisdom is about knowing which problem to solve.
There you go. That was it. I knew you'd nail it. So thank you for doing that. But yeah, and so, I think that as we look at sort of, I don't know, sort of getting into viewpoints that I agree with as well as disagree with. Um, but I think that they're both right. I think that the doomsdayers are going to have their hot girl summer soon.
Yeah,
And then the optimists are going to be the ones that are going to prevail after we have to go through a lot of that suffering, like
yeah,
you had said.
yeah. I do have some interesting, like some of the experts. There's one I'm going to pick on that is somewhat controversial that I don't personally like, Peter Diamandis, uh,
Yeah.
the Singularity guy. I don't know if you have anybody like that that was controversial in your opinion. So I don't know how much people know about Singularity. Singularity is this concept that at some point we will reach some sort of a collective intelligence within human beings. I mean, collective intelligence already exists. Like we kind of know certain things in society, and it's there. But at the same time, we are also individuals. Other, we function in a society, but every person is unique. Um, in this sort of singularity mindset, we all kind of have this, the best word I can come up with is sort of like this hive mind, HIVE, hive
Hmm.
mind, sort of intelligence. And at that time, it's almost very Gnostic. In terms of like not having matter, not having a body to live, but it's almost like consciousness. Sam Harris will talk about that. It's also Buddhistic too. I think like nirvana, like we are just pure consciousness. Um, and Diamandis has this sort of like vision that we will upload our memory, and he kind of talks about it as superhuman, like we can tap into the cloud memory, and we can still have some. It's almost like the random access memory, which is the RAM on the computer, versus the ROM, read only memory, which is kind of like
Hmm.
the external hard drive. So you
Yeah.
could have cloud hard drive for your memory, and then you just use your immediate stuff for with your brain. And then when the matter dies, like when our bodies go away, we still are sort of like conscious in some fashion. Kind of, there's a movie, Johnny Depp's movie Transcendence. I encourage people to go watch it. I've seen it. So it explores some of these concepts. To me, I am very much like I follow a lot of existentialism as a philosophy, and I believe a lot in individualism. So I feel like each of us are unique, and that's what makes this world very interesting and beautiful to look at. And then the second part of that is like I want death. I believe in death. I don't want to live forever. Once I'm done, I want to be gone. I don't want any remnants of me living or any conscious parts of me just sticking around. And this, I don't know about future life, but I just kind of in this world, I'm done. Why is that? Like, why do I have that desire? The desire is because it makes time more important. It makes, like, if my time is limited, I know this podcast is going to end. I'm going to quickly say something that is meaningful. But if we had all the time in the world, like, we're never going to make choices. We're never going to make, like, nothing is going to be precious to us. Things are
Hmm.
valuable to us because of time.
Yep.
That's kind of like like, I wish I could debate Peter Diamandis someday. But yeah, I mean, I don't care for that dude. Yeah, what
Yeah,
about any?
and there's I think there's a little bit of creep factor with them as well, just in general. I mean, I go back and I ask myself, how do people make money? And that because maybe again I'm jaded, maybe I've seen too many things in my many years of existence. But I always go back and say, what makes people make money? And when I
Mm,
look at a person like, Peter Diamandis, which I was kind of curious to, when I saw him show up in the documentary, I was like, huh, okay, this is going to be interesting, philosophical. And I didn't feel like there was a lot of there. There was a lot of hope and because he sells hope and optimism. He
right.
sells this future state of something without any concrete examples. And I'm a pragmatic, concrete freaking guy, right? And so that which I think makes you and I very different, but also is a good, we have good dialogue here. And so I found, okay, this is a person that does his TED Talks, it does his, books, does his things, and obviously X Prize is a very big thing, which is what he was originally known for. But he's selling positivity.
Yeah.
And for a lot of these folks, they're either selling positivity and hope, or they're selling, be prepared and start building your bunker now. And so, I kind of felt like this is a person that is in the business, and his product is positivity.
Yeah. 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 I feel like, well, let's talk about that. I do have some opinions on Daniel to an agency. The Daniel's the director of the
Hmm.
movie. Um, I think he's going around asking, I think May already made that comment about like, should I have a baby?
Hmm.
Maybe he'll ask ChatGPT that question, should I have a baby? This is kind of becoming the malady. Like we are asking important questions to like about our life. We are outsourcing our decisions to AI.
Yeah.
Now, what should I have for dinner? I don't mind asking that chat gpt, like who cares? Like I'm confused, like I have 5 restaurants next to me. I've got an Italian, an Indian, like where do I go? Just pick one. Okay. So that's totally fine, right? Like I feel like we're it's almost like somebody I heard someone say our overall IQ levels are somewhat going down because of these outsourced decisions.
Hmm.
So to me, that agency is sort of being eroded with all these therapy being done through ChatGPT. I mean, it's basically a prediction machine. I mean, that's how they say,
Yep.
anybody who knows this will know. So like it's not like a world model where it's taken all the data of touch and feel and smells and everything. Like we humans have intelligence from all of that. It's only taken in words and language, and of course you get a level of consciousness from language, but not it's not the same level of consciousness or intelligence as a human being has.
Yeah. Yeah.
It's sort of like giving away your agency to a machine that has that level of consciousness. It's going to tell you something, and now you're going to decide, oh, I'm not going to have a baby because UBI is going to come in and this is going to, like those
Yeah.
type of things. And I feel like that's not living a full life, not living a life of responsibility.
Yeah, and the word responsibility is an interesting one because I think if we sum up part of what the documentary is trying to tell us, it is responsibility of humans of how to use this technology, responsibility of these technology leaders
Right.
to do things. I'll tell you that the best, the funniest one single several second clip in the movie that I thought was just brilliantly done. And the director really does, when he does some of the behind the scenes stuff, it's great. He's bringing it from his own perspective, but not making it really about him too much. But there was this one part where so he's bringing in all these different people and he's asking like, is it the right time or the wrong time to have a kid? Right? Is the world. And so he asked this question to Sam Altman,
Right.
should I bring a kid into this world? And Sam Altman responded with this, with this, you can see he's got this elatement, this excitement. He said, well, I'm having a baby in March or I'm having a baby in May.
Yeah.
And then the director's reaction without
Yes.
even words, he's like, And she had this this soft smile. And he was like, really? And it was back to your point of, and it was really cute. But
Yes.
back to your point of responsibility, David,
Yeah.
he basically outsourced his responsibility as a parent to Sam Altman. Oh, if Sam Altman is okay bringing a baby into this world, then the world must not be ending anytime soon. Forget the fact that he's probably building a bunker in Colorado with, a couple of other people and
Oh, is that
living
right?
in paradise. Forget these other things that he's got all of these means to do whatever. But there's this instant where he released his responsibility
Yeah.
to be a parent to Sam Altman, who said, "Yeah, I'm having a baby too." And then, and then as Sam Altman was leaving, they were like, Mazel tov, and it was cute. But if you really peel that onion back a little bit, it
Yeah.
was the director, Daniel Rohr, releasing responsibility of the choice of having a kid to Sam Altman because Sam Altman made the choice to have a kid.
Yeah.
And think about that we're releasing our responsibility to AI, and this guy released the responsibility of having a choice about having a child to the leader of an AI company. I mean,
Daniel,
that was kind of,
watch this.
what was that?
Daniel, that the guy,
Yeah, yeah,
you're
yeah.
watching this. Trust your instincts, dude. You were right. Your instincts. Like when you met that girl at the coffee shop, you said, "I'm gonna marry her." That was an instinct that you followed. Keep following the instincts and intuition. I think we need intuition these days.
Yeah, definitely, definitely.
So, okay, so let's kind of wrap up. I My conclusion, right, to this movie overall. You know, I think Daniel asked a lot of big questions. Climate crisis, inhabiting other planets. Arms race. Catastrophes like how do we prevent tsunamis? Or actually, you cannot prevent tsunamis. You can only like just asteroid
Predict as much as
can only
possible.
predict it. It's interesting, right? Like how
Yeah.
we can only do certain things. Like the universe has its own mind, you know, that we cannot prevent. It also reminds me of like how AI is very optimization focused. And this is another book that I read called Resonance by a philosopher called Hartmut Rosa. And his opinion is we are moving towards an optimization world, and the world is more becoming, because we're extracting a lot of stuff from the world, all the resources and things like that. Now I don't know if it'll ever run out. Maybe that's, I disagree with Hartmut on that, but that's like a little bit of like my personal opinion. We'll innovate and we don't have to extract as much. But he also says it's sort of like it pulls away when that something pulls away when you try to maximize, like, you maximize productivity from your day, you become less creative.
Hmm.
Like you see this in your own life.
Hmm.
Like just kind of, I want to, every 5 minutes, I'm going to be productive and I'm going to check off the list. You will be the worst creative person ever.
Yep.
You know,
Yep.
I just wonder how Tim Ferriss's world is.
Yeah.
Like, dude, I don't want to be that guy. Like, I want to live in a little bit of a creative world where I can just take walks and do my own thing, like live really, right? So,
Yep.
okay, going back to my kind of like conclusion. So, all these big questions, I wish Daniel had asked a question about his dad's, unique cancer. Like, can it cure diseases?
Yeah.
Like some immediate problems. We're talking about inhabiting other planets. Okay, maybe someday, but you know, how about some immediate problems that we can solve today? Right. Literally the guy had in front of him all these experts like, hey, my dad has this cancer. Is it possible to find a cure in this lifetime, or it's not, it's fine, like either ways, right? So things like that, what research are we making in those type of areas? So
Hmm.
some of those immediate questions were not answered. and that might be tying into what Yuval was saying at the very end, like wisdom is choosing which problems to solve,
Yep.
versus intelligence is more about problem solving. And I also think, um, overall the movie, if you are new to AI, you might kind like Daniel always had this expression of not so clear, confused state expression throughout the movie, except for the
Hmm.
time he spoke with Sam Altman when he was having the baby conversation.
Yep. Yep.
But throughout the movie, it's always like showing Daniel in like this deer in the headlights type of look. I think most viewers will walk away with fear and confusion after watching this movie. I wish it wasn't that way. Unfortunately, it is going to be that way for most
Yeah.
outside AI folks. But maybe for folks like us, it's a good thought experiment. Like Brett said, like you said, having going and having a drink and talking about this would be helpful. So I think that's my conclusion. What is yours?
Yeah, I think this documentary makes you think. And I think that again, have that friend, have that colleague, have that coffee buddy, have that drinking buddy to talk about this film afterwards, because I think it definitely does. It's therapeutic to do that. Otherwise, you're sort of stuck in your head, spinning around with all these thoughts. To me, there was, the documentary was the promise versus the peril, and maybe they both happen. One comes first, and and then the other comes later. And I look at it, I'm a movie person probably a lot more than I am a book person. And so I think of this in the world of, are we heading to a world of Star Trek,
Mm,
or are we heading to a world of Star Wars? And so in my mind, what that means is Star Trek is, you've got the United Federation of Planets and everyone's working together for the positive. And yes, you've got the Romulans and yes, you've got the Klingons, but you've got the Vulcans that are this, thought, this maybe not quite singularity, but they are, yeah, exactly. And they are, and of course I've got my Star Trek mug here. But it's working towards this good and this positive, and you can feel that it is UBI, that basically is what makes people not have to worry about, how they make money, but it's all towards society. Then on the other side of the token, you've got Star Wars. And in Star Wars, human life has a lot less meaning, right? You're sitting in a bar with Han Solo, and all of a sudden there's a disagreement and somebody's shot dead. And that just seems to be standard operating procedures, in the world of Star Wars. And so, yeah, ask yourself, are we heading towards Star Wars or are we heading towards Star Trek? And this has really made me think a lot about, where we can go. And I think that back to your point, Dave, and I think it's really solid, is we're gonna have some AI suffering. There is going to be the job apocalypse.
yeah,
There is going to be, replacement of thinking. There is going to be the replacement of, we haven't even talked about the robotic side of things,
that's
and that there's predicted that 10 billion robots by 2035 will be doing the things that humans are doing. And we already know companies are doing a ton of experimentation and already deploying and applying a lot of robotics. And so I think we are going to have to go through this period of suffering. But if we can get through that, I was lucky enough to go to CES, the Consumer Electronics Show, this last year, and NVIDIA had a huge, AI pavilion. And there were AI, robots, surgery robots doing some insanely precise spinal surgery work, and doing things like that. We are going to find within a few years a cure to many of the diseases that we've had. We're going to be able to have this like insanely personalized medicine where you can have, one shot or one pill that is designed specifically for your DNA and for whatever your issues are. We're going to get to where our lifespans, our health spans and our lifespans are both going to be a lot longer. Um, But then that means what do we do with that extra time that we have? So if we all are on a finite timeline, and I think David, you and I agree that, our philosophies are probably fairly similar, that, we really just have this time that we have on this earth. And if that time is longer, do we get to do more with that, or are we letting AI do everything? And so therefore we don't have a lot of meaning
Mm.
in our life. And so that really has me, questioning a lot of things. But ultimately, I think we're going to have to go through a couple of episodes of Star Wars before we get to, some of the good series of Star Trek.
Yeah, yeah. Well said. Well, Brett, if people want to follow you, where can they follow you?
Yeah, LinkedIn is always a great spot. Just search for Brett Sklar. There's only one of me, Schklar. AI First Leadership is a website where you can go to my YouTube page from there. You can also, follow my Substack as well. Think Bigger with AI. And so it's a jump off point for a lot of things.
Nice. I didn't know you had Substack. We could have gone live on Substack.
Yeah. Yeah, we'll do that next
But
time.
yeah, well, if folks want to follow me, Substack, Dave Star, DAVSTAR.substack.com. Mostly writings. I do go live occasionally. I write on philosophy, adventure, a little bit of travel, and then also art. That's my thing. And then on YouTube, I kind of show a lot of these things and then talk about a lot of these things. So it's sort of like my video version of the audio or written stuff on Substack. So that's YouTube, LinkedIn, David Jitendranath. You can find me there. Well, thank you for being here. Thanks, Brett. It was a lot of fun.
Yeah, I agree. I appreciate you suggesting this.
Awesome. That's a wrap. Good.